Okay. Okay, well, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming. It's an interesting meeting to follow up on our office meeting because just when we were talking about low inventory and everything, kind of really does lead into the subject. And like Paul said, you know, real estate, especially today, is going to be a life event. You know, people just aren't moving to move like they were a few years ago. So one of those life events is death. And when somebody dies, there's two ways. Either their home was held in a trust or it was not held in a trust. If it was not held in a trust, it needs to go through the probate process. If it was held in the trust, then the home can be sold. Now, the thing that happens when somebody passes that is very interesting is there's such a thing called a step up in capital gains. So let's say a married couple has owned their home for 30 years. They paid $100,000 for the house and now it's worth $1.5 million. If they want to sell this house, they're going to have a pretty large capital gains tax on that sale, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Once one of that couple passes, that property is now reassessed to the current value for tax purposes. Now they no longer owe a capital gains on that tax. So on that home sale. So what you'll find, like, you know, you see all these people who've owned their home for years and years, and why aren't they selling? Well, because there's a huge tax burden that they sell. So once they die, the family owes no taxes. So that's a huge thing for people. And one thing about working these type of leads is it's a long-term play. It's not something that like an expired listing where you can go out and find somebody and list it. You know, these are things somebody passes. It takes a little while for the estate to start working and move to get it settled. So, you know, a probate in a normal probate situation, it could be as much as a year before that estate is finally settled. It doesn't mean that it'll be a year before the home sells. That can actually be done within 90 to 120 days. So what happens is somebody passes and then they appoint what's called a personal representative to the estate. And that usually can be a family member or a close friend or even an accountant or something like that. And that happens like usually in the first 60 days. And then once that personal representative is appointed, depending on the situation, he could either have full authority, which means that he can make decisions on the state's behalf without getting court approval, or he'll have limited authority, which means he does have to go to the court for approval, meaning so what that means is, as a listing agent, if somebody has full authority, he can list the house, negotiate a contract, and sell the home without going back to court. If he has limited authority, what that means is he lists the house, you secure a buyer, and then that deal will have to go to the court for final approval. And then in that court process, they will allow overbidders. And usually that bidding will have to start around 5% over the agreed upon sale price. So it's not going to be like $1 and beat out a client. So that's a difference between a limited and a full authority personal representative.
Can I chime in on something that I experienced once? An investor went in and purchased a home, just like you said, and they would have to go to the court. The court approved the sale, and then they came to me to do the loan. But the only problem is they put the contract in the name of their LLC, and now now the business has to get the loan.
That's right. That's right. So that's a good point. So once a contract is written on a probate sale, and there is a probate contract we have in our zip forms, it's a unique contract. And once that contract is agreed upon, the name on the contract is the only name that can close the deal in court. You cannot switch entities. So thanks for bringing that up. So if an investor is going to buy it, they must buy it either in the name of the investor or in their personal name, but it can't be changed once that decision is made.
It's not like the RPA where you can You have
or
17 days
assigning it.
to assign, and no
Nope.
assignee. Okay.
That's correct. It's got to be done right away. Now, a trust is a little different because a trust is sort of like an LLC in the sense, or a corporation in the sense that it's actually an entity. So that when somebody forms a trust and then puts their assets into the name of the trust, that entity is the actual owner of the asset. And then the trustees are the people that control that trust. So if a home is put into a trust, and you'll see that a lot, then that family can avoid probate. So the person dies, the trust still owns that home and nothing changes. With probate, what happens is somebody passes, now the court has to set up a separate bank account with the name of the estate of whoever passed, and all proceeds of the sale of the home and any other assets that they have to go into that account. And then once all that takes place, let's say that's 90 to 120 days, then there's another 120 days where all the creditors can be notified so that they can get what's owed to them before the estate is settled out. So that's why the probate sale can take up to a year to fully settle. Also, the court does set the commission rate, which is 5%. So, that's, you cannot have a 6% commission on a probate. And so that's pretty much the basics of, why a house ends up in probate, or if it's a trust, it doesn't end up probate. And that's pretty basic. And then once a home does end up in probate, that is public record. So the court publishes who the personal representatives, who, where they're at, what's their address, often a phone number or email, who the attorney is that's handling the case, who passed, property address, and all that information. So that's all public, and that's how you can work these leads. So obviously, you're not going to go, somebody passes, you're not going to go up to somebody and just say, hey, you want to sell your house. I mean, that's just not the way it works. You have to bring value to these people. And oftentimes that can mean helping them with their overwhelm. Somebody dies, now all of a sudden there's a house full of stuff that's not theirs. There might be relatives involved, brothers, sisters, cousins. They could, have interests. So there's a lot of dynamic going on there that, somebody with a calming presence can step in and help people navigate these waters, because it is often very uncomfortable. So things like personal property, how do you get rid of all this stuff that maybe nobody wants, these heirlooms? So, often being able to have resources such as estate sale people, donation places, just offering those ideas when they're overwhelmed can be very, very helpful. The other thing is, oftentimes these houses, maybe they need a little bit of work to get the top dollar for the house. And, rather than just, putting it up and, selling it to an investor or something, there's often opportunities to either bring in our concierge service or through other methods to update the house a little bit to get them top dollar, and to be able to recommend that and have resources to help facilitate that can often be the difference between getting the listing and not getting the listing in these circumstances.
For a service, can you recommend a place to get a trust that, like, lawyers charge? Most people don't have them because it's like $5,000 to get a trust. Is there an online service or a for simple?
You can go to LegalZoom and do a trust.
And that holds up in court? Maybe.
I've never tried, but here's what I will say about the cost of a trust. The cost of a trust is less than the cost of probate.
No, I agree. It's just like something.
So if somebody doesn't want to, that's, if they don't have the means, I don't know, but legal is one way, but the cost of probate is tremendous, because not only do you still have legal costs and court costs, there's actually a court appraisal that needs to take place, which is hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So there's lots of reasons why a trust is actually the more economical way to go, but I do understand up front that it can be costly. Any other questions? So, as I was saying, in terms of that these things they take a little bit of time. So it's really wise to set up some sort of a campaign to, solicit these particular deals. So whether it's a drip campaign or calling and really in each instance, it should always be coming at a place of trying to help them, not asking for business, because really that's the only way that this will ever work. Because if they think you're after the business, they're not going to begin to deal with you. It really has to come from a place of help and also compassion. There's a loss of life. There is, again, oftentimes, so often siblings don't get along, or this brings out things in them that just causes a rift. And to be able to kind of just be the person that everybody can trust and talk to, and maybe just realize themselves how, really it's the emotions talking and not the truth, can be just very, very beneficial and rewarding. It's a very satisfying part of the business to be able to help families work through these situations. So I do have this set up in my business. I do work these leads and I have a system set up, and I am interested in having a couple of people join me and help me. I do have the leads and stuff to work out. So if something, if anybody's interested in kind of being a part of that team, I'd be happy to talk further about it with you guys. Is there any other questions that you have?
I think people say like, oh, find a good probate attorney and like that, they'll recommend that. What do you recommend going after those loved ones? So
That's a great question. So thanks for asking it, because I wanted to talk about that. And I would say both. So oftentimes it's just like every part of our business. Most people know a realtor. So if you hear of somebody that is passed in your center of influence, that's what you want to do, is somehow get to that person again from a complete point of service and help. How can I help? It must be overwhelming. I have these resources. I can help. I've been through this before. You may not have. Those are the type of things that calm people down and reassure them. So certainly within your center of influence, that's just something to think about when somebody passes, trying to be helpful there. And of course, attorneys are the ultimate source of this business. If you have a few good attorneys that are referring you business, that can keep you busy. But how do you get to these attorneys? Again, attorneys have lots of people contacting them all the time. So one of the great ways to do it is if you do happen to have a friend or something that you're able to help in these circumstances, there will be an attorney involved. That's your guy. So if an attorney is involved and you happen to get a listing, that you want to be communicating with him all the time. First email that goes out, I'm so happy we're working together. I want you to know you can contact me. I'll be telling you what's going on every step of the way. And then don't bother them. Attorneys are busy. They don't want to handle every little question. You're the real estate expert. You should have the answers. And they should you should be taking it off of their plate, not putting anything onto their plate. If you make one thing difficult for them, they'll never use you again. So off their plate, onto your plate, you're the one who takes everything on, because that's actually, you get paid more than the attorneys do on these transactions. So that's something to think about. My view is I want to make things easy for everybody I work with. I don't want anybody to have extra work because of me ever. And that's just the way I think. So thanks for bringing that up.
Roger, how do you envision the team, or what's your vision for the team? Division of labor, or
Yeah, there's lots of these leads out there. So the leads can be divided up. That's not a problem. And then really the thing that's important about this business, if you're going to try to get business is that you do have the ability to help people. If you do have an infrastructure in your business to help these types of people, great. If you don't, and you're soliciting them, it's not gonna be successful. You know, there has to be some language spoken, and just, you know, resources are key to this. It's having the resources to be able to help these folks in these times.
There's some sleazy estate people out there, like the estate sales.
Yeah.
people. Yeah, I just ran into a couple.
Estate sale people, yeah, I actually have some great estate sale people that I personally work with that I've referred to many, and they've actually referred me some business. So, you know, look. Same thing could be said about every industry, certainly our industry, attorneys, I mean, there are people that only have dollar signs in their eyes. And that's the thing, if you are able to, you know, we all have our financial needs, but the reality is we have to put our customers' needs first, always. And to be that help to them, because that's the only way that we're going to be successful. And not only that, but having that attitude will generate the referral business that we all want. I mean, that's just the absolute key to it. From attorneys, from center of influence, whoever it is, if you're providing somebody an incredible experience, a referable experience, you will get referrals, but it does have to be a referable experience.
So would you create like some sort of like packet of like what you can offer people? When would you create it for the attorneys, one for the attorneys and one for clients of the attorneys?
Yes, I mean, so that would be the two-pronged approach. So when a probate is listed in the courts, you'll get the name of the attorney and you'll get the name of the personal representatives. And though you can go after both of those. The attorneys are a little tougher, you can't get them on the phone or whatever. It's just hard. So to come up with a creative strategy to try to get to attorneys. The other thing I would also recommend as far as attorneys goes, again, it's another center of influence play. Who do you know? I'm an estate attorney. I'm looking to build this part of my business. I'd like an introduction. You know, that's because, again, coming from somebody who knows you and trusts you, it's going to be a lot easier than trying to call an attorney who has no idea who you are. Obviously, they're busy, and that's a challenge.
Is there like extra classes or something that you can take to help you be better service to the clients, It's like
Certification program.
There's definitely
RAR.
There's definitely probate certification courses that will teach you about the probate process, and I would advise taking them so you have that knowledge.
Yeah, SRAR
We
operating.
have one
Yeah.
coming up soon.
But here's my question. So we all have our real estate license. Did anything you learn getting your real estate
No.
license help you getting
No.
business or how to treat a client? It doesn't. So the things that I'm talking about are the things that get business. It's knowing how to be helpful to people, not just, I need a sale. I need a sale. Where's my sale?
I didn't
Somebody
know.
died, let's sell that.
I didn't know if there was something in there that was like, these are the things that come up, emotional things that come up. that help you.
Typical things are,
I mean, I've been through it. Both my parents passed away.
I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
Then you're an expert. And that's the bottom line. What was hard? Sibling, who wants what? What do I do? My parents told me to take accident or dollars for the husband work. There's lots of stuff. It's like, what's that? So it's just being the colleague or being ready.
Good one or bad?
It's common, and the point is, it's probably that happens most of the time.
Yeah.
And that's, so to be the light in that situation is a blessing to the family.
Yeah.
You know.
Been through it, you certainly gonna make them.
That's
Not
right.
like
And also,
you're-
I think this too will pass.
Yeah.
People, emotions
Yeah.
die down, everybody, that's a little bit more, so those types of personal experience, and that's what real estate is, right? When we have a client, no matter what we've been through, you're able to have that experience and talk to them. I've sold a house before, I've done this before. I mean, that always just lends the credibility to what you're trying to do, for sure.
Yeah, I think also like being of service and keeping their best interest in mind, because what happens also is like then the dust settles And a year later, or 2 years later, and they're looking back and they like reflect on the transaction and like, they'll realize if you were not being in their favor.
Yeah.
You know, like they'll look back and like, oh, actually, this guy, what the fuck were they thinking? You know,
Yeah,
and
I mean,
they're
we
listening to you from a vulnerable.
Yeah,
Remember
for
the
sure.
thing that still passed by the property, that we, you know, there was a beach house, and we still passed by it, and some of us are mad and some of us are okay.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
And it happens, and you know, the other thing too is, you know, attorneys are dealing with the same personalities. So if they are dealing with this family squabble, and all of a sudden they're not hearing from the family anymore because you're dealing with it, they're gonna love you.
I had this one experience where, a client's wife had passed away. And, a family referral, so I go to meet him, and he has her will, which was done by a notary, never do that, always have a lawyer, had the wrong address. So I said, you know, we can't sell this, this has to be corrected. It was a trust, so it wasn't supposed to go to probate. So I helped him for a year, like got him a lawyer. Some lawyers were like $50,000. I got him one that was a couple $1,000s who was able to like prove that he was the husband. And it was the wrong address. She put an old address. And a year later, I just helped him get through it. I said, I'm so sorry, you can't sell this house. You don't own it, you know, and you have to go through this process. It took maybe a year or two, and he did. He said, I will sell it with you, and he did.
Oh, good, awesome,
Yeah.
yeah. And you know, that's.
I mean, I
and
helped
that's
him
the
for
time.
2 years, and I felt so bad for him because, you know, that's such a simple thing, but after my mom's estate, I tell everybody, never have a notary do anything for you that matters, because it won't hold up in court.
Yeah.
You have to have a lawyer.
Yeah, but that's a kind of a typical
huge lesson.
thing that these things take time. You know, it could be
Yeah.
a year
Yeah.
of working with somebody. Yes.
Can you, if everything's still checked?
Oh, yes. Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, mine is for Bonka. Burbank.
And that concludes this.
Any other questions? Anybody else?
No,
I think I missed something earlier. You said if you own a house and the person dies, what happens to the taxes?
So what happens is, it's called a step up.
Okay,
So once somebody passes, that house now will be assessed at the current market value for tax
really?
purposes.
so it's interesting that you pay less
So you
taxes,
no longer, not property taxes,
right,
capital gains.
capital gains, right,
So in other words, if the day before that person dies, if they have $1.5 million profit, they're paying, you know, 500,000 in property taxes.
right.
As soon as that person dies, zero.
They don't pay property taxes.
Not property, I'm sorry, capital gains.
Capital gains. Okay, that's what I was
Capital
like, I
gains.
didn't get this right.
Property tax
That's
does not
interesting.
change. Capital gains, which is the tax on your profit. That's what they'll no longer have a profit. Because now the home is if they paid $1.5 million for it instead of 100.
And that's even if the home is in a trust?
Yes.
Okay, 'cause I have a client right now that has a home that was their parents' home that the parents taxed. And they have a home and they want to sell it, but they're afraid they're gonna pay the capital gains
When
tax.
did they pass?
I'll have to get more information.
Because,
Cause I was like, I
because
don't
they
know how
have-
that works. I'm taking a class.
you know, they're for residential real estate, for your personal residence. There's 250,000 for an individual and 500,000 tax exemption, right? For profit. So that always applies as long as they've been in the house 2 years.
Up 58, right?
Yes, but once it's over that 500, now you're gonna start paying capital gains tax.
So if the
Oh,
house,
someone else is waiting.
so if the house is worth, let's say $1 million, but
Mhm.
they, of course, the house was paid off, let's say 30 years ago.
Yes,
So if the house is worth, let's say $1 million now. Let's say the parents passed 10 years ago, I don't know.
so let's say, so
Hypothetically.
here's the hypothetical.
Right, okay,
So they paid 50,000.
okay.
Now it's worth $1 million,
Okay.
okay? The parents died 10 years ago. Maybe the house is worth 600,000 at that time. So that would be, for tax purposes,
Is where it
the
was stopped.
value And if it's a married couple, they still have 500,000 of tax exemption, they may not pay anything.
Their account.
See, so if it's been, so then you would have to go back 10 years, do comps for that area. And then, in fact, I just sold a house and the gentleman's wife had passed 15 years ago. He's just getting around to selling the house now. So I had to do a CMA based on 15 years ago to give the value then, what it sells for now, plus he has his exemption and the payment tax.
So if you got a notice that somebody, there's house in probate, somebody died, obviously. And you, one of the things, it sounds to me that would be helpful to tell the heirs is, would you like me to do a CMA?
Yes.
Because you're gonna need to value the house.
Correct. The probate is a little different because the court will appoint an appraiser, court appointed appraiser, but yes. That is, when somebody passes, that is something they will need. It's a trust actually more so than a probate. Because the trust and a trust can use a CMA from a realtor as evidence of value.
So here's another tricky thing, because we were talking about capital gains, but let's talk about property taxes. Because when there's a change in ownership, typically, there's a reassessment of the property.
Not if it's within the immediate family.
Because I have a client who mother had a trust, he was the beneficiary, when she passed, he kept that trust purposely so that
For the tax.
it wouldn't get reassessed.
Yeah, I think if it's to a child, it doesn't get reassessed. I don't think you can do it for a brother or sister, but I think if it's immediate family, there's no reassessment. I think a parent can give a house to their child and the taxes stay the same.
I have a question. A friend of mine is looking to, with her, live with her parents, but she wants to rent out their current home, buy a new home. The father probably is gonna pass in the next like 5 years. Would it be, well, but then I guess she would be on the home as well, so it'd be her and her parents.
Yeah, if it's held in trust,
Yeah,
then there's no issue. She could
Okay.
be a trustee, they could be trustees.
okay,
There's, this trustee may have this kind of rights to sign or buy or sell. Once this trustee passes, now this trustee has those rights, so that can all be set up in the trust.
okay.
Yeah, and that's the right way. That's the easiest and most economical way to do it.
Okay.
Mhm. Anybody else?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
What do you said you had, are you a realtor as well?
Yes,
Okay.
that is what I do. In
I
this
was
office.
No, I was asking you that you had people you were looking for a team and things of that nature, so.
Yes.
I'm curious, okay.
Well, I just believe that, especially with, I have felt like this for a few years now, that this market, the inventories is not going to change. And that's because just like they were talking about, everybody refinanced, the hunkering down is just a reality. So, and when somebody is selling a home based on this type of life event, that's a motivated seller. They're not keeping the house. So, price usually isn't an issue. And, you can usually get the job done.
Does this tie into people who are, because what do you call those people? Boomers. Me.
I'm a boomer.
Boom, boom.
Are you?
boom.
I'm a boomer.
I don't know how, okay, I have no idea how boomers are. Okay, no, we're good. But, these people are like 70, 80 right now, right? Even if they don't die, but they transition to like a, living facility.
It's very difficult. And I'll tell you, I believe that there probably needs to be something done about this because they can't sell the house.
Yeah, because if people
They'll get
move away, and-
clobbered
yeah,
with
they don't
taxes.
be.
Let's say they need to sell their house to get this money
To put
to
them
move
in-
into a facility.
Yeah,
They're going to pay a substantial capital gains on the sale. So for me, I mean, it'd be wise if the government said, okay, you're over 80, or over 75, you sell your home, no more capital gains.
Right.
I mean, there should be something.
Yeah.
Because that money, the people count on their personal residence as retirement.
Are they able to do the reverse mortgage and use that to pay?
Yeah,
for
that's
the
right.
retirement?
Not if they go to a nursing.
Right, they have to stay in the
They
home.
have to stay there. They have to be able to certify that they're in, every year that they're in their home.
Yes.
Now, if they have a way to do that, then, you know, that's different, but
And around them.
technically, they have to be able to sign something that says that they, you know,
But nobody's like coming and checking if they live there.
if they don't sign it. So they send a letter saying certified, and if that letter is ignored, they'll send another letter, and if that letter is ignored, they'll send something else.
And so I sign a letter and when they, something happens, and I have to go to a care home. They can't, like.
I think they maybe can
I'm
recall the
looking
loan.
for a loophole.
Yeah, that way they can recall it.
Loophole.
It's really risky that they,
You know what I'm saying? If I did a reverse mortgage and at the time I stayed for like 2 months and then I moved to a nursing facility,
That might buy you some time.
you know, I'm like, I'm looking for that, like,
Yeah,
the way to get it done without.
and they could, you know, maybe never, you know, return to that nursing facility and.
Well, they
And
don't.
it's a moving point. So
Well, we
they will have been able to use their equity in the.
Because when I'm door knocking, I'm getting a lot of older people.
Yeah.
And they feel stuck where
Yeah, they are stuck.
the home is too much for them to take care of, but they can't afford to move anywhere else. So they're stuck in this house that they could definitely benefit from this $1 million, but they need a solution.
There's no solution. I know, that, I mean, that's a big
So I'm
deal.
I'm thinking the solution
And
would
it's
be
more and
reverse
more.
mortgage.
And it's more and more and
Yeah,
more.
they're
We're gonna give it a
reverse
deal. Is there any other questions? Should I stop this now?
But they can also downsize.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
They can also downsize and purchase with the